Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Wellness Cafe. I'm Dr. John here, and today we have Dr. Lynn Rossy phoning in from Columbia, Missouri. She is a health psychologist specializing in mindfulness-based interventions. She developed and researched a 10-week Eat for Life class that teaches people to eat mindfully and intuitively, love their bodies, and find the deeper meaning in their lives. And she published multiple books, and we're going to be talking about mindful eating today and really kind of touch on different concepts of mindfulness and how you can actually apply it into your everyday life. Welcome, Lynn. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Well, thanks for coming on.
Sure.
How's the weather right now over there? Because I'm going to be in the Midwest tomorrow.
Oh, you are?
Yes.
It's absolutely beautiful. The morning is about 60, and it's going to get up to about 85 today.
Oh, awesome.
Yep. It's good.
Yes. Let's kind of, we did a little pre-chat and we got to know each other a bit. But for our audience who's listening right now for the first time, let's kind of go into your backstory and, how you got to this point and your journey, your background.
Well, let's see. I was born in Hannibal, Missouri. No, well, I was born in Hannibal, Missouri, and I moved out to California like you did. I lived in San Francisco for a few years in my 20s and early 30s. Then I moved to LA, and I was really kind of searching for myself and what I wanted to do with my life because I really didn't know. And hit a few bumps in the road, maybe fell down a few holes, so to speak. And it was when I was out in LA that I was introduced to a meditation practice. And I saw how much it was changing my life. I discovered what I wanted to do with my life. I moved back to Columbia to start a degree program in psychology. So it was really through my own kind of hard knocks that I kind of fell down far enough that I decided I better start looking in a different direction and really developed a spiritual path. And I think from that spiritual path, I developed this interest in mindfulness, got introduced to Jon Kabat-Zinn's work. He's the one who has put together the mindfulness-based stress reduction program that is being taught around the world. So got trained in that. And I also started studying Buddhist meditation books and practices. And so I kind of did both of those things at the same time. I jumped into kind of a more secular way of embracing mindfulness and also became knowledgeable in some of the underpinnings of the mindfulness practice, which comes out of Buddhism.
Definitely. And, I think each of and every one of us has that point in their life where they're fall down a few steps, stumble into a few holes and whatnot. And to me, my personal journey with meditation, which I do on a regular basis now, was from my mom. Actually, she actually forced me to meditate, and of course, how that went, right? I was like, what the hell is this? Why am I sitting still? And I was probably 14 or 15. So, of course, I did that a few times, and I was completely rebellious against the idea. It didn't make any sense, even though I grew up in a Buddhist country. I grew up in Thailand, where there's a lot of Buddhist traditions. But it didn't really land in me until I went through my own stress, the periods where you don't really, I guess, chaos, uncertainty, some depression, and then you're trying to just find a ground, find a stable ground for yourself, and that's how I learned about Buddhism and meditation and mindfulness and just the practice of how to get out of here, the monkey brain and back into the place of here and now. So are you willing to kind of go back and visit that for a second? What was the pivotal event that kind of turned you on to meditation and mindfulness?
Well, actually, like I said, I was kind of finding myself when I moved out to California. When I moved to LA, things kind of went bad for me. I moved down there to marry a guy that we got divorced. Well, divorced. We split up a month after we got married. So it was bad. It was really bad. I was kind of young and naive, and I trusted this guy. And so I moved down to LA to marry him, and he turned out to be kind of a bad person. But I didn't know that till after I got married, and I found out shortly thereafter that he was kind of a pathological liar. So my world really fell apart. I mean, that was really the moment that I can say I really, really bottomed out. That was very devastating for me. And so after that happened, I felt pretty lost, and nothing was going right after that. I became somewhat depressed, probably had a number of bad relationships. I had, probably did a few too many drugs and a little bit too much alcohol. And anyway, that all bottomed out. And so it was like searching for love in all the wrong places, right? Mm-hmm. And I did that pretty well for a little while. And then I really did, I found a 12-step program. That was actually my first entry. And that was very helpful. And then I found another program called A Course in Miracles, which I don't know if you know anything about it, but it's got a meditation component to it. And so I started doing that. Marianne Williamson. Yeah, she was actually living in LA at the time. So I got to go hear her talk once a week, which was great. Had a lot of fun with that. And that was one of the things that I really have always had had since I've gotten on a spiritual path, is that it's been fun. It's like I like joy. I like there to be joy in my life. And my spiritual path is filled with joy. So I found a lot of joy in the practices that I did through the Course in Miracles. I found a lot of joy in listening to her talk, and in the 12-step programs. Getting sober in LA is a lot of fun. I don't know. It's like there's all these like actors and actresses that, give all the talks. And so you're like having paid performers, giving talks at all the 12-step programs. So it was a hoot, it was really a lot of fun. But I started actually working with people who were dying of AIDS at the time. And this was before there was good medications. And I was really drawn to work with people who were dying, because of that experience. I had some good friends who were experiencing a lot of difficulties with AIDS, and went to some of the programs. Actually, Marianne Williamson had a program for that. And so I was really pulled to work with people that were dying because they were in tune with their spiritual life, right? So there was really this connection with spiritual life that I found in that. So when I came back to go to school, back to Missouri to get my PhD in psychology, I really thought at the beginning that's what I would be doing. But as things happen, and you follow your path and to where you're supposed to go, and where it led me was really mindfulness and mindfulness-based interventions and meditation practices that are really accessible to anybody. And I really love that. The mindfulness-based stress reduction program, because it's just given this vehicle for anybody in the world to be able to access this life skill called mindfulness, which is really, being in the present moment with kindness and curiosity and compassion. And that act of befriending yourself and befriending the things around you from moment to moment saves people's lives, gives people freedom, helps them with every kind of imaginable physical and psychological, issue they might have. Certainly saved my life, and it does. It saves the lives of the people that begin to practice. I see it over and over again.
So when you were working with, was it AIDS patients that are terminally ill, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because of course, when faced with a terminal diagnosis, your reality shift a bit, right? Now you gotta have to prepare for the final departure, or at least from this realm, which is death. And I guess that's the biggest practice of letting go, is just how to be acceptance to that. What did you learn while you were? I mean, I'm sure you learned a lot from people that are going through it by just being around them.
Yeah, so I guess what first comes up to me is that life is precious,
Mm.
and that we only live life in the present moment. You don't live in the past, that's not life. You don't live in the future, that's not life. The only place that you can live your life is in the present moment, and it is so precious. And so the more that we can do to live in the present moment and know what it is that we're doing and to express ourselves as fully as possible, are our lives fully lived. And that we actually have a responsibility to live our lives fully, right?
Mm.
We've been given this gift, this beautiful gift of a human body, right, in order to live our lives in. And oftentimes we just become unconscious. We can become unconscious about what we're doing and why we're doing it. And so half of the time, people are not living in the present moment. There's been some really good research that has shown that half of the time we're thinking about the past or thinking about the future. And so we lose about half of our lives. That's criminal. I mean,
Yes,
really.
definitely. And I'm sure it's worse now with the tech world where you have this ability to just zone out from the present moment
Right.
anytime with your smartphones.
Yeah, and that happens a lot. So I see mindfulness really as this tool, not only to help us with stress, but to really get the most out of life,
Mm.
so that we can begin to actually have a relationship with ourselves, right? So people that come to like my mindful eating classes, they've lost touch with their bodies and they've lost touch with their emotions and their thoughts. And so it's about really beginning to reestablish this relationship with the body, because the body is so wise,
Mm.
right? Because the body can tell us when we're tired, when we need to sleep, when we need to rest, when we need to eat, when we need to drink water, when we need to maybe get away from something because there's something that may harm us, when we may need to go towards something because it's going to be good for us, right? Our bodies tell us how to navigate through life in ways that we have really lost touch with. And so if you take that to eating, for instance, it's like your body can tell you if it wants to eat, how much it wants to eat, if it wants to eat, what kind of food it wants to eat. All of these things we can tell if we tap into our body, right?
Right.
So we were talking earlier, before anybody else came on, about, listening to your head about when to eat and what to eat and why to eat. And that's the wrong place, right? So if you listen to your head's probably going to say, I want that because it looks good. I want that because it's there. I want that because, I'm happy or I'm sad or I'm bored or I'm, angry. Let's just reach for food and let's fix it. That's what the mind is going to say.
Mm.
It reaches for food even when the body's not hungry.
Mm.
So we have to drop down to our belly. And so listen to, is the belly wanting food, right? So in general, my rule, okay, it's a general rule, so it can always be broken, is to eat when you're physically hungry and don't eat when you're not physically hungry.
Right.
Now that would change the way everybody eats.
And I mean, I'm guilty of it as well, where sometimes you don't, you're not even hungry, but you have this, I guess, drive or desire to just grab something and put in your mouth because you're stressed out. Maybe your dopamine's low and you just want that. Instead
Right.
of really listening, hey, am I hungry? Do I want to eat this thing?
Yeah, and so when we are stressed and we eat, it does actually set off chemicals inside the body that temporarily gives us pleasure, right? So it's a reinforced cycle, right? So when we're stressed and we eat, it sets off hormones, or not hormones, but chemicals like dopamine that make us feel better for a moment. And then we're like, okay, that worked. Let me do that again. But the problem is that you're setting up this cycle, and you're also, when you're stressed and you eat, you store the food as fat,
Mm.
which is not what you want to do,
Right.
right? So we really want to take a few deep breaths before we eat. right? Take a few deep breaths, because when you take a few deep breaths, you're already jumping out of the stress cycle, right? When you take a few deep breaths, you're kicking in the parasympathetic nervous system, right? Which is the opposite of the fight or flight response and the sympathetic nervous system. And you're relaxing the body. And so you can begin to tell the difference between, am I really hungry, or am I just experiencing sensations in my stomach related to stress? Because sometimes those are similar.
Right.
Right?
It requires a deeper, I guess, attention to be able to differentiate the two.
Yes. Yeah.
And
So,
yeah, before we kind of go deeper into that subject, do you help a lot of people with eating disorders, or it's just in general the people that attend your classes and workshops? Who are they?
well, they're everybody, right? So when I first taught this class, everybody has an eating disorder of some kind. It's like it may not be classified in the diagnostic manual as an eating disorder, but there are so many people. So how I advertise my class, I say, if you struggle with food or your body, if you eat when you're stressed, if you eat when you're angry, if you eat when you're frustrated, if you eat when you're bored, if you eat when you're lonely, if you do any of these things, you could probably use my class. Right? So I've had everything from very young people to, I think youngest would be in their 20s, to people in their 80s. I've had everybody from normal or below normal weight to overweight. So the people that show up, and men and women, right? So people that show up for the class are really anybody that eats, because eating has become so complicated, right? And we've gotten into this idea that food should be fast, quick, and easy, and that's not how your health is going to be supported, right? Is by going to the fast food restaurants. We really have to assess what we're eating and know what we're eating, so that we can put food into our bodies that's going to energize us and give us wellness or well-being, right?
Right.
So I have a lot of the research that I did, because I did do research about my program, and I had people that kind of ran on the binge eating continuum. Some of them might have been classified as binge eaters, but some of them were just on the continuum of binge eating. And that from my research, I showed that people went from binge eating to not binge eating, right? People who have anorexia don't usually show up for a community class. They just don't come to a mindful eating class. Now, they can be taught mindful eating in a more of a clinical setting. I don't see them showing up for my classes, generally speaking. Mindful eating does help with people who are anorexic after they've been given the opportunity to re-nourish their bodies and to get on some kind of a feeding cycle that's appropriate for them. It's a little trickier with anorexics. But yeah, people who are on the continuum of binge eating, bulimia, that kind of thing, do definitely come to my class. But it's really for the general public.
Definitely. Do you want to get into the basics of mindful eating?
Sure. Yeah, let's do that.
Sure.
Okay, so I already started and I gave you one of them, right? So B is breathe and belly check. So before you eat, you want to breathe, take a few deep breaths, because again, that kicks in your relaxation response. And we want to eat when we're relaxed, because actually your stomach, your digestive system is working when you're relaxed. When you're stressed, your digestive system isn't working, right? So we want to relax, we want to breathe, and then check in, am I hungry? Right? So in general, we want to eat when we're hungry, not eat when we're not hungry. A stands for assess your food, right? So pick the food that you want to have and then look at it. I did this with somebody today. Actually, this is kind of funny. So I said, look at what you are going to be about to put into your body. And so we talked about it. It was some kind of chocolate ho-ho. And I said, look at all these things that are in there. And so I think you need to kind of be aware. It had high fructose corn syrup. Now, we all know that high fructose corn syrup is not good for us. And it had about 5 other different kinds of sugars. Now, I'm not big on looking at, calories and things like that. And this is not a diet approach, but I think we have to be knowledgeable about what we're putting into our body and not throw our brains out when we go on to a non-diet approach, right?
Right, and not feed your bodies with chemicals. I mean, some of
Well,
these,
it had kind of that aluminum, it
yeah,
had aluminum in it.
yeah. I mean, glyphosate or
Right?
different types of unreadable
Yes.
chemical compounds that are
Yeah.
in your food.
So is it food or is it a food-like substance? Right. So he was about to put a food-like substance in his body, and I know that he just got back from being off of work for 3 days because he was having trouble with what he was eating. So I said, if you want chocolate, come up to my office. So I brought him up to my office. I gave him a piece of really good chocolate, and I said, now taste this. Here's some really good chocolate. You can have that. I'm not against chocolate, but make it good chocolate. Don't make it chocolate that's going to kill you. So I threw his packaging in the trash and I gave him the good chocolate. So anyway, we have a good.
Assess your food.
Assess your food.
Okay.
So look at the colors. Look at the colors. We know that when you eat a lot of different colors, you're getting the nutrition that you need. So take a moment to assess. Decide if it's food you want to put into your body. S stands for slow down.
So
most
right
of us eat too fast.
before we go into the S, so do you just basically tell your clients or your student to like reassess, like look at it, like do you really want this, like ask it a second time, kind of?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Got it. Because
Yeah.
the first instance can be pretty aggressive, right? Like the way we respond to our impulses. I want that in the mouth, gone.
Right.
Right.
Right. Yeah. Particularly when you're first learning, right, about what is it that you want to put into your body. Really take time, like be conscious. It's mainly about being conscious and making a conscious decision. And if you want to put high fructose corn syrup in your mouth, that's up to you. But we know that that's not good for you. So, but know that you're choosing. And most people don't do that anyway. I mean, once they come to a mindful eating class, they really are looking for a better way of eating. And they are willing to say, okay, and consider, is this something that would show respect for my body? So that's a big part of my class, is this idea of learning to befriend your body so that you're not putting food into it that's going to make it, sick.
Right. Honor your body.
Yeah. Honor your body. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry
All
for
right.
the interruption
That's
earlier.
okay.
All right.
So S stands for slow down, right? About a fourth of eaters are slow eaters and about 3/4 of us are not. And we know from the research that slowing down actually reduces food intake. Because if you slow down and you give the body time to register fullness, right? It takes 20 minutes for the body to register fullness. So as you're slowing down, you can put the food down between bites. Take one bite, put the food down, let go of it. Chew it thoroughly and really enjoy it, and then take another bite. So you're slowing down the process. Don't make it so slow that you're going to hate eating, but really think about just taking a few breaths and not just inhaling your food.
And like enjoying the sense, the sensorial experience of it. I mean, yeah, because I was actually talking to a patient of mine. She lost, like, I want to say 220 or 250 pounds, right? She was probably like 450 or something like that. And within 4 or 5 years, I think that's what she said, with eating real food, eating whole foods. And also, this is her practice, and it really resonated with this point, so I wanted to bring it up. She said she would take one bite at a time and then put the fork down.
Mm-hmm.
And then that practice alone, so I'm showing our audience how powerful this can be. So she would take one bite, chew her food entirely and swallow it, and then take another bite. But her fork would be on the table. And that's her rule. And that's it.
Yes, that's it. That's awesome.
Powerful.
I love that. Yeah. Yeah, it really is. All of these steps are powerful.
Yes.
So the next one is I, which means investigate your hunger throughout the meal, but particularly halfway through. right? So we oftentimes eat and we're not really paying attention to our hunger signals and satiety signals. And so once you've finished half of your food, just stop, and really reassess. Am I hungry? Am I still hungry? If you are, continue to eat. But if you're not, then put it away for later or throw it away.
A lot of people have problems with that.
I knew you were
Throwing
going
your
to say
food away. I was raised by my grandma in Thailand, and she would whip me if I leave like 2 grains of rice in my plate. And she would remind me of how the farmers would work so hard to get this rice on the table, and you are not respecting those farmers.
Right. So I was just in Washington, D.C., and I was at an exhibit at the Library of Congress. And in this country, so it comes from World War I, right, where you had, waste, no food. I took a picture of this. I took a picture of this poster, right? But if you read the whole poster, it says, don't give yourself a portion bigger than what your body needs. And we're not used to doing that because we've not checked in. So when you're first learning how much your body needs and what portion size you need to give your body, it can be helpful to not treat your body like a waste can.
That is true.
Your body isn't a waste can, right? So as you're learning, there can be a few times that it can be very helpful to throw food away. And to this day, if I put food into my mouth that I discover after it's in there that it's not probably what I should be eating, I will throw the rest of it away. Right? So I think there are times when it can be very helpful as a learning experience to know that your body's not a trash can. Because, people clean their plates without even thinking about it. And they clean they clean their kids' plates. It's like, oh, if my child leaves some food, I'm going to eat that too, And it's like, that's not helpful. That's not helping anybody. That's not saving a starving child anywhere in the world.
Right. Now,
yeah.
Do you think, as a psychologist, do you think that's more of, I guess, what that means to them, like leaving food on the table versus, the psychology of just wanting to eat the rest of the food? Like, is that more of a, I guess, a deeper, different issue?
It could be a lot of issues, right? So it could be anything from, I was taught not to waste, therefore I can't leave, food on my plate. It can be that I was raised in a family where I never got enough to eat, and so I have to eat a lot of it now, or I had to fight for food. Sometimes people say that. It can be that, that there is a lack of money, there's a budgetary situation. And if I waste that food, then I'm wasting money and I don't want to do that. And again, it's about learning what your portion size should really be so that you're not serving yourself more to begin with, right? It can make people anxious to leave food on the plate, right? So mindfulness helps us to deal with the anxiety. What happened for me when I was first learning mindful eating was that I noticed that if I stop, so I actually ask people to stop when they're satisfied, but not necessarily full. There's a difference between satisfied and full. Okay?
You want to elaborate?
Yeah, yes. I will. So satisfied means that I'm no longer hungry. But there is actually a space between no longer hungry and full. Okay, because if you've eaten to the point of fullness or maybe a little too full, your body has actually had way more than it needs. So in some cultures, there's even sayings for this. So in healthier cultures, they say, I think this is from Japan. Yeah, it's called harahachibu, and it's called eating until you're 2/3 full. Right? So other cultures know and have, it's part of their whole way of being is that you don't, there's other cultures that have this as well. It's like you only fill your belly partially full, 2/3 full. Leave some space.
Right. I think it was also in Okinawa, if
right.
I remember correctly, and that part of the world, as part of the blue zone where people actually live the longest.
Right.
So
Absolutely.
there's some
Yeah.
correlation there.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if you, I don't know if you ever listen to Louis C.K. or not, he says that there's satisfied and there's full, and then there's you eat until you hate yourself.
I love Louis C.K.
So anyhow, I mean, sometimes when you go to a buffet, right, it almost promotes somewhere between full and you hate yourself.
Right,
Just,
right. That's
just
why I never go to a buffet. That was money wasted. It's like because I'm never. It's like it feeds that mentality that all you can eat, get more for your money, and that mentality has created an obese society.
and truth is, you're never gonna win. Like you're not
No,
gonna beat the restaurant.
no,
They're never gonna lose money, so you're never gonna win.
no,
Right.
no. So C of the B.A.S.I.C stands for chew thoroughly, right? So there's so many reasons to chew your food thoroughly. So chewing your food thoroughly helps you slow down, right? It also it promotes, believe it or not, teeth health, right? Also, it helps your digestion. Your stomach doesn't have teeth, right? Your mouth has teeth. So you need to chew your food while it's in your mouth, not rely on your stomach to chew it up, right? That's going to give you indigestion. Right? So if you would chew thoroughly, you're actually probably going to help if you have any symptoms of GERD. I had a woman who first started doing this, and she said when she started chewing thoroughly, she doesn't have any more symptoms of GERD. All right? So it can really help with your digestion. Also, when you chew thoroughly, you're actually taking in the nutrition from the food through your mouth more readily than if you just chew it a couple times and swallow it. And when you have more nutrition from the food, that's a good thing because your body really registers when it's had its nutritional needs met. So if your body isn't getting its nutritional needs met, it's going to still be hungry. That's why when people eat a lot of highly processed food, fast food, they are still hungry. Their body is still crying for food because there's no nutrition in that kind of food, or there's very little nutrition in that kind of food. So when you eat food that's nutritionally poor, then the body is still going to be hungry, even if you've eaten.
Right. Wow. So that's 5. So let's kind of go back. Belly check, right?
Yep.
Assess your food.
Yep.
Slow down.
Yep.
Investigate fullness.
You're right.
Chew thoroughly.
Yes.
What's the last one?
Savor. Okay. The best for last, right? So savor your food, right? If you can't savor it, why are you eating it? So really, I love food, right? I really want people to have a great relationship with food, and I want people to be able to enjoy food, in a way that's healthy for them. So you can eat food that tastes good and is good for you. The best food is good for you and it tastes good, right? And that's what we're looking for. So have a really pleasurable experience, really taste your food, really enjoy your food, really savor it without any guilt whatsoever. You can have anything that you want. You just have to eat it mindfully and decide whether it's food that you want or not, right? If it's food that you can savor. And really, people all the time, I don't have to tell people not to eat, certain kinds of food. I just say, go eat it mindfully and tell me if you like it or not. And over again, people say, I can't eat fast food anymore. I can't eat, that highly processed stuff anymore. I mean, people really start changing what they eat simply because they have had the experience of eating it mindfully for the first time, and they notice what it's like. I mean, seriously, it's amazing how unconscious we can be around eating. I had one woman who came in after learning the basics. That's what I teach in class 1. She came in after week 1 and she said, I don't like anything I eat. I just hadn't noticed before.
Wow. That's powerful. Yes. Yes.
So that's really how unconscious we can be. And I hear all kinds of versions of that story. Maybe not everything that you eat, but people begin to discover that, wow, this food I'm eating isn't good. How can I feed my body better?
Or I guess add to that is also how recognizing how they feel after they eat certain food, because once they become more mindful, after learning about the basics or the mindful teaching, they're going to be more mindful of how they feel afterwards. Sometimes you just feel like crap after a certain food, right? I mean, that's
Oh
a
yeah.
given.
Oh yeah. Right. Absolutely.
And to add to that as well, and I was talking to Dr. Borden. He was talking about a lot of people are eating in front of a screen
Yes.
and taking away the eating experience itself, like diluting it, distracting it with your favorite TV show, which is streamed into your pocket now with your phone, or watching a game or a movie, and really neglecting the eating experience.
Right. Yeah. I really think that we have to get back to the dinner table. I mean, we need to sit down and have food together. It's just, it really encourages better eating habits, but it encourages community. It helps our relationships. Even if you live by yourself, because sometimes people tell me they live by themselves and it's really hard. And I think that it's important to eat meals away from the screen, and not that you're going to eat every meal away from the screen, but certainly, I mean, there's times when I eat by my computer. I mean, I admit it, so that's going to happen. But I think once a day, have a meal and just eat, really, and use that as a time to reconnect to your body and reconnect to yourself. It's a beautiful thing to do. Make it nice. Have nice flowers, and light candles, and bring out the good napkins and the good china.
Right, just to create that atmosphere where you actually going to enjoy it.
Well, yeah, because it's a pleasurable experience. And when I ask people, how many times do you have a pleasurable, time with just yourself during the week? And people have a hard time giving me any activities that they do that are enjoyable and pleasurable just for themselves. And eating can be one of them, and it really does encourage consciousness, being more conscious around our lives and our food.
Yeah, and also sending this subconscious message of you're not important enough to be acknowledged while you're nourishing your body.
Right.
I think, and that's the beginning of self-respect right there. Wow, if you start to implement this, you're gonna feel better overall.
Yeah, and I think it's helpful also to have to develop a daily meditation practice. I really think that a daily mindfulness practice can be helpful, because if you just start these practices and you don't know how to deal with your emotions, and you don't know how to deal with the thoughts, the monkey mind that you were talking about earlier, it's going to be hard to just sit down and have a meal, because you haven't been trained that when the mind wanders, you bring it back. When the mind wanders, you bring it back, because the mind is going to wander. So practicing a formal, like, sitting meditation practice can be very helpful in learning kind of the more holistic view of mindful eating, which I think includes mindfulness of our emotions, mindfulness of our thoughts, mindfulness of our body. It's not like mindful eating is alone in a vacuum here. We have to really think about our entire life and how are we finding meaning in our entire lives. And part of that is with food, but we also need to do that with many other things as well. And so if we're finding meaning in other things outside of food, then food won't be the sole focus of our lives. And sometimes with people with disordered eating, food has become like this constant thing that they think about. And I think that if that's the case, you need to learn how to start focusing on other things that have meaning for you, right? When I told you I went through kind of my dark period when I was living out in LA, and I used to smoke. I'd quit smoking cigarettes, and I'd quit doing drugs and alcohol, all these different things. And when I really discovered, and I gained a lot of weight, right, through the process. And as I took the weight off gradually over a period of, let's say, 7 years, because it isn't going to happen overnight, but it will happen, and it will be a lifelong. It's a lifelong journey, but you have to be patient, right? And now I'm to the point where where I feel perfectly fine, the weight that I'm at. But what happened was, and I think what really helped me was that I took the focus off of food and off of my weight and onto other things that were meaningful for me, right? And once I did that, it was amazing what happened. The weight just came off.
Right. It's a byproduct of
It
the
is.
lifestyle.
Right. So part of my class is about really helping people to think about other things that give them meaning.
Awesome. I want to take you back really far in the beginning of our conversation. That was right before we talk about the basics. You mentioned that mindfulness practice can allows you to explore and have more compassion, and kindness, and curiosity. I'm curious about the curiosity part. What does that mean?
Well, so one of the attitudes of mindfulness is a beginner's mind. Right? So when we're coming into the present moment, we're asked to come into the present moment as if we've never been here before. And guess what? We've never been here before. Right? But we live so much of our life thinking we already have it figured out. We already have it under control. We already know what's going to happen. We know what he's going to say. We know what she's going to say. We know how this is going to go. We know, we come in with all of these expectations about life in each moment. And that means we miss out on life. Life isn't fresh. Right? So when we come into the present moment with curiosity, what's this moment going to bring? I don't know what it's going to bring. I need to just be open and to pay attention and to be willing to discover.
Listen.
Yeah. See, listen, see, hear, touch, smell, move with awareness, right? And be fully present for your life as it's happening without expectations, with a beginner's mind, with curiosity.
Okay, well, that
with interest.
Makes a lot of sense, and yeah, it's powerful.
Yeah. And then when you do that and you follow that, what happens in that moment, if you take care of that moment by being fully present for it with openness, then the next moment will take care of itself, and the next moment will take care of itself. And really, my whole life has been about, since I've found this practice, is about following my nose, really, like being open to whatever in front of me, right? And to be fully open to whatever's there and to see where it leads me. I don't know where I'm going to be next week, and that's exciting.
Yeah, and you're fine with it.
I am. Yeah. Well, because earlier you said something about you found the mindfulness practice so you could get some solid ground underneath your feet. And what actually happens is that you lose the ground entirely.
And you're okay with it?
Yes.
Yes. It's
because there is no ground.
Yes, there is no ground. Yep.
The ground is always shifting, right? There's just nothing stays the same. It's always changing. So one of the problems that we have, as human beings is we want to pin things down. We want to make it stable, and it's not. So if we can give up the idea that we can control everything, we can control some things, but it's mostly a fantasy. And if we can be and play with that knowledge that life is always changing, can we be with that change? Can we be a part of that change? Can we not struggle with it, but actually enjoy it and see where it takes us?
Honor and accepting impermanence.
Absolutely.
Brilliant. This is
I didn't
fun.
make it up.
This is fun. Where can people reach you?
Okay, well, I've got a website, and they can go to www.lynnrossy.com, and there's a contact link on there, so you can just email me through my website if you'd like. You can also, I've got a Facebook page called Tasting Mindfulness. I've got a Twitter handle at Dr. Lynn Rossy. And I think that's mainly it. They can also buy my book on Amazon or Barnes & Noble or any other independent book, store that's out there on the internet. Everybody carries it. And it's called the Mindfulness-based Eating Solution.
The Mindfulness-based Eating Solution. All right, everyone. We will link all that up into the show note, and we'll have the basics of mindful eating up there as well. And the conversation today is applicable across the board. Whoever you are today, wherever you are in the world, you eat. So you
Right.
can definitely apply what Lynn is teaching you today, and really go in with curiosity
Yep.
and be open to what it may bring you. It may change the entire eating experience that you've been. It changed everything you know about eating, right? Because you don't know what you don't know sometimes.
That's very true.
So before we end the conversation today, I want to acknowledge you for doing what you do, doing your work, teaching other people about mindfulness practice, teaching corporations to incorporate mindfulness practice for the employees, and writing a book, doing the podcast, and just sharing your wisdom and knowledge. Thank you for that.
Oh, you're so welcome. It's so much fun to be here.
And thank you for your time as well. The name of the show is called The Wellness Cafe, and we talk a lot about mindfulness and wellness. I want to ask you, what does wellness mean to you?
What does wellness mean to me? Well, when I think about wellness, I usually take a more holistic approach. Sometimes wellness is just thought about as physical health, but I think wellness is really our health of our bodies, the health of our minds, the health of our hearts, the health of our relationships, the health of our relationship to our community and our relationship to the world and the environment. So I look at wellness pretty broadly, that we have to really consider. And I even do this with eating, right? So I think that eating is a personal act. It's a spiritual act. It's an environmental act. It's an agricultural act. It's a political act. I mean, every bite of food that you put into your mouth, it impacts the world and your body. I think that's fascinating to think about, right? And I do talk about that in my classes, because eating is such an amazing act that we do, that we take so for granted so much of the time. And there's so much that we can learn about ourselves and the world that we live in through this act of eating. It's an act of love. It can be.
Michael Pollan says that you vote 3 times a day, and you're
We
absolutely
do.
right. Thank you
Yeah.
so much, Lynn, for coming on today.
Thank you.